Ah, Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Happy December. I hope everybody's looking forward to the holidays. Let me make sure this other window is muted. Last time it wasn't. Okay. Anyway, today we're going to talk about, welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind, if I didn't say that already. We're going to be talking about The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. We are starting chapter 3 today. But before we get going, I'm going to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then Catherine, if you don't mind, you can start the reading, and then we'll just go from there. So, jump on at it.
Good morning. This is Jason from Tampa Bay, Florida. Happy to be here.
Good morning, Lori in Denver.
Good morning, Darren Sisek in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Good morning, it's Catherine Clement, and I'll do the reading. So we're starting chapter 3, which is, what page is that? 63 in the hardcover or paperback. Getting specific, how to spot the upper limit problem in daily life. Now I want to ask you to focus the power of your awareness on several specific actions. The purpose of this exercise is to notice how your particular version of the upper limit problem operates. Once you see it in action, you'll have a new navigational tool for your life. When I was learning to drive, I remember my instructor telling me that driving was more an art than a science. The key to the art, he said, was what he called benign vigilance, or paying keen but relaxed attention to what your car and the other cars were doing in every moment. Your journey in the zone of genius is just like that. In learning to live in your zone of genius, you'll benefit from making a lifelong pursuit out of spotting your upper limit behaviors. Make spotting them part of your daily ongoing maintenance procedures, just like brushing your teeth or adjusting the side mirrors of your car. Typical ways we upper limit ourselves. Years ago, a client of mine invented a new verb to describe his upper limit behavior. He said, "The other day, I caught myself in the act of upper limiting myself." It caught on among participants in our seminars because it puts the upper limit problem in a practical context of something you're doing. When you're upper limiting, you're doing something that is crimping your flow of positive energy. Fortunately, there are not very many ways we upper limit ourselves. Tune into yourself as you read them to discover which ones are familiar to you. I'll start with the most common one, worry. Worrying is usually a sign that we're upper limiting. It is usually not a sign that we're thinking about something useful. The crucial sign that we're worrying unnecessarily is when we're worrying about something we have no control over. Worrying is useful only if it concerns a topic we can actually do something about and it leads to our taking positive action right away. All other worry is just upper limit noise designed by our unconscious to keep us safely within our zone of excellence or zone of competence. Here's how it works. When things are going well for us, our upper limit mechanism kicks in, and we suddenly start worrying about things going wrong in some way. We start justifying those worry thoughts with more worry thoughts, and soon we are busily manufacturing scenarios of things falling apart, coming unglued, and devolving toward imminent doom. When I first noticed this tendency in myself, I was amazed at how quickly I could go from a couple of insignificant worry thoughts to a grandiose doom scenario of the end of civilization. If you notice your worry thoughts, really study them carefully for a couple of days, you'll find something that may surprise you. Almost none of your worry thoughts have anything to do with reality. Here's what I mean. Let's say you make a cup of coffee in the morning, put it in a to-go cup, and rush off to work. You're speeding along, happily sipping your brew, when suddenly you worry that you may have left the kettle boiling on the stove. That's a reality-based worry thought. It's worth worrying about for two reasons. First, your house could burn down. And second, you can do something about it. There's a good way to know if a worry thought is something you should pay attention to. Just ask yourself, is it a real possibility? And is there any action I can take right now to make a positive difference? With the kettle, the answers are obviously yes and yes. It's a real possibility, and there are positive actions you can take right now. You can go back and check to see if you turn the flame off. You can also call back to the house and have someone else check. However, even these kinds of reality-based worry thoughts can be an upper limit symptom for some people. Some of us worry constantly about whether we've done something wrong or careless, like leaving a kettle on. It's a facet of our personality. I know quite a bit about that personality type, having had the opportunity to study in an example from the inside for as long as I can remember. It's not important whether you're a born worrier or a newcomer to the habit. All you really need to know is this. When things are going well, or when you're feeling particularly good, you can always bring yourself down by manufacturing a stream of worry thoughts. Once you've brought yourself down by worrying, it's very tempting to inflict those worried thoughts on others. If we're in the grip of worrying while someone around us isn't, we seem to have an almost uncontrollable urge to criticize that person until he or she jumps into the stream of negativity with us. I once coached a billionaire who worried constantly about losing money. In reality, he could afford to lose $1 million a day for at least 5 years and still have $1 billion left. His worry spilled over into his marriage, into the upper limit symptom we'll look at in a moment, blame and criticism. He often bugged his wife because she bought the most expensive brand of toilet paper. She liked a particular kind, but he was always trying to convince her that cheaper alternatives were just as good. In a situation like that, it's pretty clear that tissue's not the real issue. It took a little bit of gentle pummeling on my part before he finally he saw that his worry and criticism were just ways of disrupting the flow of positive energy in his life and in the relationship. Since he was a guy who lived by the numbers, I started by asking him to get out a calculator and figure the actual cost of the toilet paper. I said, imagine she went on a wild binge and started buying 100 rolls every day. And imagine if she really went off the deep end and bought 100 rolls a day for the next 50 years. How much would she have spent 50 years from now when you're both 90 years old? He punched in the numbers and came up with the cost of her lifelong extravaganza, $1.5 million. I then asked him to calculate what percentage of his net worth it amounted to. He didn't even have to use a calculator for that part of the assignment. I don't remember the exact number, but it was far less than 1%. I asked him how much his net worth varied from day to day due to ordinary stock market fluctuations. He said that it would sometimes vary by as much as $100 million from hour to hour. I pointed out that even if his wife went on a super binge and bought 1,000 rolls a day, it still wouldn't amount to a single day's fluctuation. Given that, I said, what's the real reason you're criticizing your wife? There's a saying I've developed based on many counseling sessions that revolved around money struggles. Money arguments never have anything to do with money. Money arguments are always about something deeper, and it was certainly true in this case. We discovered that deep down, he didn't feel that he deserved to be wealthy and loved too. He had grown up in a wealthy family, but according to him, his parents spent much of every day in a pitched battle with each other. Without realizing it, he was carrying on in his own marriage the family tradition of constant bickering. In his original family, the formula was money equals arguing. It didn't matter if the amount was $100 million or a few bucks for good toilet paper. If there was money involved, there had to be an argument about it. I gave him the assignment of going cold turkey with criticism and blame. I asked him to call a complete halt to criticizing his wife about money. To engage his competitive powers, I told him I highly doubted he could stop criticizing his wife about money for even one day. Jutting his jaw defiantly, he took up the challenge. When he and his wife came in for their next session, they both looked about 10 years younger. They had even taken his assignment to a higher level, both of them deciding to eliminate criticism in general from their relationship. He told me that they had spent a delightful week celebrating what we have rather than carping about what we don't have. I encourage you to make a careful study of your worry habits. I've seen a lot of lives change, including my own, when people drop their addiction to worry. And yes, worry is definitely an addiction. In fact, worrying is like playing a slot machine in a gambling casino. Occasionally, the worrier will hit the jackpot and be rewarded for something that actually happens. If you worry long enough about the stock market crashing, you'll eventually hit the jackpot because from time to time, it's always going to crash. Being a recovering worrywart myself, I know a lot about chronic worriers. I didn't realize until I was nearly 30 that most of my worrying was about things I had absolutely no control over. Up until then, I thought worrying was somehow helpful and useful. In fact, I believed that if everybody else wasn't as worried as I was about the things I was worried about, there was clearly something wrong with them. Gradually, I came to see that I was just worrying for the sake of choking the flow of positive energy in myself. Worrying was one way I was upper limiting myself. Did you ever see the great Woody Allen movie Annie Hall? There's an illuminating scene in it that shows how the upper limit problem works in relationships. Woody is running frantically around the bedroom, wringing his hands and trying to get his wife interested in his latest conspiracy theory about the Kennedy assassination. She looks on with patient exasperation until finally his rant slows down enough for her to get in a word edgewise. She gently suggests that maybe these obsessions of his are simply ways of avoiding intimacy with her. There's a long pause when he considers her point. The audience anticipates that he will mount an outraged denial. Finally, he says, "You're right." There's a lot of wisdom in that moment of inspired cinema. If you took a random look inside any person's mind, chances are you'd find some worrying going on. If you suggest to the person that those worry thoughts are simply ways to avoid feeling the flow of positive energy, chances are the person won't say, "You're right." They'll probably argue that their worrying is absolutely essential to the correct functioning of the universe, and that if they'd stopped worrying, the whole enterprise would collapse. I know because I used to feel that way myself. I thought my 24-hour-a-day stream of worry thoughts was the correct response to life. It took me a long time to figure out that 99% of my worrying was completely unnecessary. It was very humbling to realize that my worries were there just to make me miserable. It was even more humbling to realize that I was the guy who had his finger firmly pressed on the misery button. It was wonderful, though, to discover that I also had the power to quit pressing the button. Do you want me to continue?
Well,
I
that's a
was
good
thinking,
question. We could either continue this section and get all the way through the worry.
that's what I was thinking, get through the worry.
Yeah, I think we should just go ahead and complete
Okay.
it, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay. Worry, what you can do right now. Now I make it a daily practice to spot my worry thoughts. If you can do that, you can use them as springboards into your zone of genius. Kurt, lay down. I'd like to show you the tool I've developed. It's a sequence of moves that will reliably get you out of the worry trap. Let me take you through the moves step by step and then follow with a real life example. I notice myself worrying about something. 2, I let go of the worry thoughts, shifting my focus away from them. 3, I wonder what positive new thing is trying to come into being. 4, I usually get a body feeling, not a thought or idea or where that positive new thing is trying to come through. 5, I open my focus to feel that body feeling deeply. 6, I let myself feel it deeply for as long as I possibly can. 7, later, I often get an idea of the positive thing that was trying to come through. Here's a walkthrough of the process using a real example. 1, I'm walking down the street of my town on a Saturday afternoon. I pass a jewelry store where my wife, Kathleen, and I have bought beautiful pieces over the years. I glance in the window as I pass, admiring some of the items. About 15 seconds later, I notice some worry thoughts about money. Specifically, the worry thoughts are about whether we have enough money to help a gifted young member of our family go to the private music conservatory she wants to attend. 2, I notice the worry thoughts and let them go, just dropping them in mid-thought without pursuing them. 3, I wonder what positive thing is trying to come through. 4, I feel a pleasant sensation in my throat. 5, as I walk along, I let myself feel it thoroughly, savoring the pleasant sensation. 6, a few minutes later, getting into my car, the insight occurs to me that seeing the jewelry in the window triggered a wave of guilt about the level of abundance my wife and I enjoy compared with other members of our extended family. Seeing the jewelry also sparked a feeling inside of me of how much I love and appreciate my wife, and how I wish there was some piece of jewelry that could really express the depth of those feelings. I sit in my car for a few moments before turning on the engine, letting myself enjoy the sweet feelings of how much I love and appreciate my wife, and how much I appreciate the prosperity we've created in our lives. I realize there's no physical object like jewelry that could express those feelings. They exist in the non-material world, in the feeling of flowing connection between us. 7, I pick up my phone and call Kathleen. She's out doing errands too, and it turns out she's about 2 blocks away from where I'm sitting in my car. I tell her the sequence I just experienced, from the glance in the window to the worry thoughts to the delicious moment of letting myself feel the overflow of love and appreciation for her. I say, let's make sure we take more time to celebrate what we have. Just one second. 8, she agrees and gives me a big virtual kiss. I say goodbye, start my car, and head home. Let's explore what happened here. First of all, I chose not to regard my worry thoughts about money as being actually about money. That's the attitude I want you to take towards your worry thoughts in general. I want you to see them as upper limit symptoms, unless they are about something real that you can do something about right away. In my case, I was walking down the street on an errand run when I had the worry thoughts about whether we had enough money to send the member of my extended family to music school. My mind quickly computed that those thoughts were not about something real. In reality, I can easily afford to help my niece out. The real issue is not money. It's whether I want to deal with the emotional dynamics that often accompany giving money to a family member. In addition, the worry thoughts were not about something I needed to act on right away. Even if I wanted to provide the money, I was not likely to stop on the street and make a phone call to transfer the funds. That was the second reason my mind computed that these worry thoughts were more likely an upper limit problem. This computation only took a nanosecond. That's what I'd like you to aim for too. With practice, you'll get very nimble at noticing which thoughts are ones you should pay attention to and which ones you can dismiss. Speaking of dismissing, I'd like you to notice how I simply drop the chain of thoughts about money. Imagine squeezing a tennis ball in your hand, then releasing your grip and dropping the ball. A lot of people don't realize that they can dismiss worry thoughts just like that. One moment the thoughts have a grip on you, then you suddenly realize it's you who have a grip on them. You release the grip and the thoughts disappear. They come back again and you release them again. With practice, they disappear and don't come back if you give your mind a more productive thing to do. The productive thing to do is to look for the positive new emergence that's trying to happen. In other words, when you find yourself worrying, know that there's something positive trying to break through. Your worry thoughts, particularly if you find yourself recycling the same ones over and over, are a flag waving at you from your zone of genius. Something is trying to get your attention. Look beyond the worry thoughts, and you will often find a new direction that's being laid out for you. When I'm operating in my zone of genius, I'm doing what I love to do, and I'm enjoying what I have. My worry thoughts about money were simply a sign. The sign said, it's time for me to expand my capacity to revel in the joy of having created abundance and love. To my knowledge, that combination is something new in my family lineage. It's new territory, and I'm learning to live in it. To do that, I need to overcome thousands of years of programming that adversity is a constant requirement of existence. We need to savor our success, first for seconds at a time, then for minutes that grow into months. It's a heroic task. Science tells us that it took a very long time for our fish ancestors to evolve the necessary equipment to turn those initial flops onto dry land into walks. Now we're in a stage of evolution in which we're doing the inner equivalent of those early fish flops. We're learning to let ourselves enjoy love, abundance, and other forms of positive energy without sabotaging ourselves. Patience is called for, along with a good pat on the back for ourselves when we have moments of savoring our good fortune.
Well, thank you, Catherine, so much for reading through that. I know that was a long section, but I think it was good for us to get through it. This is a really a topic I think that can connect with most people on the worrying aspect, and I liked how he kind of brought up this idea that that we can recognize it as an upper limit problem if we kind of work through these steps, and I thought it was fascinating to think about worry as a like a blocker to something good trying to come through, like you're and I thought, well, that's just a really interesting way of looking at it. I guess I really never thought of um, worry as a blocker necessarily. I mean, obviously I have worries about all kinds of random stuff, and some of the time it makes sense, some of the time it doesn't, some of the time it's just busying my mind, like it just like this whole thing of not allowing myself to feel good when I could be feeling good, or like when one of the examples from one of the previous chapters where he was like feeling good, and then all of a sudden he went into these like worry thoughts about his daughter, and that and he recognized it and was like, oh, I'm just making myself feel bad because I don't feel like I deserve to be happy in any given moment, and so I think it's just a really interesting how he suggests that you dig deeper and you ask yourself that question of what positive thing is this worry thought blocking me from. So that's really interesting.
I was going to jump out and say that, yeah, worry is something I've kind of constantly deal with in a lot of ways. And it's funny, within my family, my grandmother, God love her, I love her to death, as we all know. But we in the family, we all had our little thing we didn't make fun of her, but we would call her, you know, a worry wart. She would worry about everything, you know, anything it seemed like. And it became kind of like a little bit of a running joke. But as I've gotten older, and I think within me and respective members of my family a little bit, I think we all tend to have some of that aspect in us. And we tend to go overboard. I know I do. And a lot of times, the time I get into those thoughts is, it's weird, is when I'm out Ubering in between rides. All of a sudden, I'll be, you know, have the rider and have had conversation and stuff, and then I'll be in between or looking for my next ride. And I'll be kind of good or listening to the music on the radio. Then all of a sudden, this weird random thought just pops in out of nowhere. And then I kind of grab onto it because it's like, oh, something to kind of, like you said, occupy my mind a little bit. And then it goes into this worry about, I start thinking about this or that or the other thing. And a lot of times it's weird. It does center around money, about how, okay, how am I going to, do I have enough money to pay this? Will I be able to cover that and that? And I tend to go in that spiral, even though I'm out working and I'm making money, and I make money every day to kind of put back in to help cover what I'm, you know, it's not like I'm having to wait 2 weeks to, you know, get my full paycheck. I may not get the full amount at that one moment, but I'm getting part of it now. So let's say I spend 150 today. Let's say I make 120 today. Well, I got, you know, covered a good portion of that. And so, yeah, I'm having to retrain my mind that, you know, I have a constant, you know, it's always being put in as long as I'm out, you know, if I take time off, that's when, you know, but it's amazing how your brain can really get in and take hold and take over if you let it, and let that idea and let those things seep in. And it is, like you said, you know, it's like a vice grip. All of a sudden, it has you so torn up. And a lot of times then it goes into the guilt of, well, should I be feeling, you know, good about all these things when I know I've got all this? But usually it never plays out as, in most cases, it never plays out as bad as it seems in your head. Once in a blue moon, it does, you know, like me with my car accident, it really kind of put myself in a real, but it could have been worse. I could have been dead, you know. So seeing how, you know, these type of things can really take over, it helps know that, you know, we have the power to let go of that grip, let it fall away, and replace it with more positive thought. But it's up to us to make that conscious decision to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting, this whole concept of kind of like you know, like worrying is a habit, or worrying is an addiction, or a just you know, it's where our brains kind of fall back into. And I don't know, maybe we're not busy doing something, or like you said, you were in between rides and didn't have anything you needed to focus on at the moment or whatever, and then they instantly go into these worry thoughts. And you know, particularly around money, which is really interesting, because you know, I have been in all, well, not all levels by any means. You know, for me, from where we are now, this is probably the most financially stable we've ever been in my life. And I have the same freaking financial worries as I did when we had minimal income, or like back when we were really struggling, you know, when we were losing our trucking company, and everything was falling apart. We ended up in bankruptcy. We lost our house, lost my car, you know, all of those things. And I still go into worry thoughts of similar levels and similar thought processes that I did back then. Back then, I didn't have a dime in the bank and I owed everybody. Now I have money in the bank where if some disaster happens, I mean, I won't be instantly unable to pay my mortgage, you know? So I, it's, it's crazy how we do these things to ourselves with just these thought processes. It doesn't matter. And like the guy with the billionaire guy that could lose, you know, his actual like wealth value could fluctuate hundreds of millions of dollars a day based on the stock market. And he's worried about his wife, you know, or he's giving himself worry thoughts and criticizing her over freaking toilet paper. And it's such a mind-boggling thing to think that it doesn't matter where you are financially, is that you can have worries over the dumbest stuff, and that it really just boils down to these underlying things. And I love how he walked us through this worry that he had, where he, you know, he saw the jewelry in the window, and then he immediately went into this worry thought. And that, you know, so he stopped himself and he's like, okay, what positive thing am I trying to block here? And he started thinking about how much he loved his wife and appreciated her. And so that was like one level that he stepped into, and he realized, oh, okay, I'm blocking these positive feelings by instantly putting up this worry that's like a financial thing. And then he dug even deeper and realized that not only it wasn't even a financial thing that he was worried about, he was really worried about the emotional issues he might have with his family member if he was to give them money for his niece to go to this special school. And it's so fascinating that if we just can take a moment and look deeper into what our worry is trying to actually reveal to us, that we could have a completely different thought process happen in our lives and actually come to some serious conclusions. And this is a big thing when it comes to communicating with people in your life too, because you know how we get into these arguments, or we get into these conflicts with each other in one way or another, and we think it's about this surface thing, right? But in reality, it's actually about these underlying things that we can't express because we don't even realize what it is. And until we look deeper and, you know, identify, okay, well, you know, the real worry here isn't money. The real worry is, or the real thing that I'm trying to block myself from is either A, I don't feel worthy of being in this loving relationship, or B, I feel guilty about not doing something, or, you know, I'm seeing you act in a certain way and it's bringing up feelings about my past. It doesn't have anything to do with the other person. And I've seen in my life so many people sabotage their relationships over these underlying things, that if they could just communicate what they're really feeling and not this surface thing, and they could have these deeper communications with each other, is that then they can actually have a better relationship, because it would be a more communicative relationship, and it could be just a more open and opportunities to understand a deeper level of each other, and you know, those kinds of things. So anyway, I kind of went off on a different tangent there, but that's what it made me kind of think about. So I mean, we try and block ourselves from happiness in so many different ways, and it's just mind-boggling sometimes.
Yeah, I like the part where he talked about, you know, where he says, I noticed myself worrying about something. I let go of the worry thoughts, shifting my focus away from them. How often do we even get that far? We don't. We stay in that loop of just being there, you know, and only until recently do I sometimes I may not go and in my head say, oh, I wonder what positive, but I may say, okay, I might say to myself, okay, there's really not much I can do about this. It's really not that big of an issue, or it's not really going to come to that level. I'm just building it up, and I sometimes can get myself to let it go there. but I don't even go to thinking, okay, I don't go even to the next step of going, well, I wonder what positive, and then, and I'm not sure if I've ever had the body feeling on that. I may have, and may not have just really recognized it as being a aspect of that. And if I have, I did it so subconsciously that I didn't realize I was doing it, and even opening myself to focus the feel of the body or feeling it as deep. And then later, now sometimes I do later get the idea of the positive thing that was trying to come through, but I think I dismiss it a lot of times. I don't associate it with that particular, it might come through later, but I don't put it back to with that. So sometimes I think I dismiss it. And I think that's something that is worth saying, because I think a lot of people probably do those same things too.
I think it's interesting that money is such a worry factor, and it has been for most of my life. Even as a little kid, I was raised with the idea, well, money doesn't grow on trees, and there's never going to be enough, and you're never going to be able to make it, and somehow over the course of time, it's taken me a long time, but I had to give that up, that there's not a job in the world that I can do, that I have the skills and the training and all of that to change the fact, and somehow learning to live within your means. Very fortunate with the situation I have, but I recently read a book called The Illusion of Money by Kyle Cease, and I think it's helped me so much. It might be crazy that I don't go through and balance every penny in my checkbook anymore. I know what I have coming in, I know what I have going out, and I just check my balance to make sure there's not been any funny business going on somebody else on my account. But it's nothing I can change, and so what's the point of worrying about it?
Interesting.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Catherine.
that's okay. Go ahead.
I've yapped enough already. I'll let you go.
I think it's, I've never considered worrying as being a precursor to something good coming. I've definitely never looked at it that way. I have always looked at it as it doesn't really serve. And I've kind of programmed myself to be terrified of worrying because I think that I create my own reality. So if I'm creating my own reality and I'm worrying about all these horrible things, so then I got to where I was worrying a little bit about worrying. And then I finally decided that it was all just way too exhausting to deal with. So if I don't have an action that I can take, now this is kind of funny because this situation came up in an experience with my son over the past couple of days. He got a new job and he got into some worry thoughts, and he contacted me, and then I didn't want him to have the worry thoughts. So I took action by calling my friend Samantha Studebaker and asking her if he could have access to her husband and all of his infinite knowledge about trucking, and just having his telephone number to call if he should need to completely like bounced him back out of that worry stream that he was going down. And he has a mind that can get very focused on on worry thoughts, and dive down to the worst scenario immediately. Like and then he'll kind of stay there and focus on it. So I was really, with him heading into a new job, I'm like, no, I don't want him to have all those worry thoughts going. I didn't think of it as in those terms exactly, but that's what I was thinking. Like he's in this new situation and he's nervous and he's going to be fine. But he needs to be focused on the excitement part and not the worry part. And it's the same thing with, everybody knows I deal with chronic pain. It's the same thing with chronic pain. It's a matter of moving your focus from one sensation or situation to getting your mind to focus on something different. I call it distraction, but it's the same concept as he's talking about here with the worry thoughts in a way. It's just you have, if it's not something you can change, if it's not something you can take action on, then you just have to drop that thought and shift it to something else. And that's kind of what I do with the pain. There's nothing more I can do for the pain. I can't take any more pills. I can't, I do my self-care things. And when all that's done and I'm just there with it, sometimes I sit with it for a long time trying to figure out what it wants, but then other times I just have to drop it and move on. And but just like the worry thoughts, the pain comes up to get my attention about things. I've noticed that. Sometimes pain comes up to tell me something is physically wrong, but sometimes it's telling me that maybe I'm worrying about something, and it's alerting me to that. So it isn't it's one of those red flags kind of saying, hey, get your attention over here. Thank you again, Samantha, for helping me give my son a sense of comfort over that situation that he's in. And, I think as animals, as humans, as animals, we have this survival instinct. And so I like that he brings up that, many people can go into that doomsday scenario very quickly, and it picks up speed. And I mean, that's happened to me so many times. Like I can start out, it's like this one little tiny thing, and all of a sudden it's like Armageddon in my head. Like what the hell just happened? Like the whole world is gonna come apart if this next thing doesn't happen the way that I want it to happen or something. And sometimes it's just so ridiculously funny. I mean, I laugh a lot at myself and the stupid things that I think. So I like this idea of catching ourselves before we roll down the hill with the snowball,
I totally cannot remember what I was going to say when you were jumping out, Catherine, but I got another thought coming in my head. So leave it to me. That's what happens a lot. But when we were talking earlier that, I like how he was talking about money and how that tends to be and I'm going to call it a trigger. It seems to be a trigger and causes the worry to come in. But then, like he says, we try to get the people around us to sense our sense of worry and cause for alarm, and that the sky is falling, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, and we want everybody to look up and believe that the sky is falling. When they're looking around and they see sunny skies, and if they don't join us, we try to get them to join us, and then that's usually a lot of times I'm going to assume. I know I've had my share of relationships, and sometimes I project my worry or stuff onto them, or then it goes to the next deeper level of what really is hitting. And then that's when the real things come up and you start throwing the hurt or the pain or something somebody else did. And it's totally way off subject of what you originally were even on. And it goes down and becomes a big, deeper rabbit hole that you go down. And you get nowhere, and it causes pain and hurt that probably never ever should have come up over a little simple worry, because you let that take that grip and take over. And instead of realizing that it's within you, it has nothing to do with a lot of what's out there. It might have some things out there that help trigger it, but it's more how you responded. And so therefore, and taking that moment, like he says, that, quick moment to do an assessment. Okay, is this me just worrying about something and me just getting triggered and not looking for the positive, or looking at for what might really be trying to come through that I can look at and be appreciative of and sit in and take and move out and let go, like the tennis ball, let go of that and let it drop and move into this other. And I think, a lot of times that if we can learn to catch that faster, we can probably avoid a lot of arguments too, with family, friends, loved ones, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, go ahead, Jason. I didn't really have anything to say other than just to affirm what Dan was saying.
Oh yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, everything you guys are saying is so like on point there. It's just it's amazing to me how it can seem to be that our thoughts about worrying and failure can seemingly be so weighted on that side that we're more apt to worry about something than to think positive about things. And it's interesting that it also seems that it's a common experience that it's easier to end up flowing with the worrying of things, as if that's somehow creating some calmness within us and allows us to feel better about where we are in life, rather than focusing on the positive. And I was thinking maybe that comes from seemingly not having any control over that sort of over the momentum that happens from things getting out of control and starting to go negative, that we feel maybe that we have more control over working at creating a life or a positive situation, or creating things, making things the way we want them to be. And that when things start to turn to not be the way we want them to be, that it seems like it's out of our control more so. And so that we spend a lot of time trying to keep things from starting to spin out of control. But I've been, I realize, I mean, like, and from this reading too, it's great to realize we have that power to stop pushing the button, so to speak, on allowing us to worry, and that we can create the momentum. We create the momentum in our just with our own thoughts. I mean, it just starts such starts in such a slight manner, you know, with just some positive thoughts, and then focusing further on the thoughts and how those thoughts can even come create even greater, more positive things in our lives, and not even giving any space to the negative. And and it's funny, it came, for some reason it came to me, that cartoon, that Warner Brothers cartoon from a long time ago with the Roadrunner, Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. And it's interesting to me that, you know, the Wile E. Coyote is, you know, kind of the main character. They're always telling the story from his point of view, where he's trying to capture the Roadrunner, but the name of the show is Roadrunner. And so, but from the perspective of the Wile E. Coyote, no matter what he does, the Roadrunner always gets away. There's always something that happens that foils his plan, you know. But from the perspective of the Roadrunner can't do any wrong. He always gets away. Something miraculous always happens, and he gets away. So it's kind of like, how are we going through life? Are we going through life as the coyote or as Roadrunner, thinking things will always work out? But anyway, that's just some thoughts I had. I really love the idea that he was talking about, how we can, you know, the tennis ball, and being able to just let go, and then make that mental change to just, you know, be focusing on the positive. And I also appreciate what you were saying too, Lori, and about the money aspect. And you know, these discussions just bring up so much, allow us to explore our, you know, internal thought process, and I think it's so very helpful. So thank you everybody.
I was going to just say, and you bringing up Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, but I can picture it and I can see an analogy, and it is Wile E. Coyote is like the worry, because you'll see him make a plan, but you can almost see him question the plan too, because he's had so many other things go wrong. So it's like he thinks of it, but then it's almost like you can see it. Whereas the Roadrunner, he's learned the idea of letting it go. He does not really have a worry. He doesn't even worry about whether the Wile E. Coyote is going to get him or not. You know, he's not even phased. You know, he just turns and looks at him and goes beep beep, and then, you know, shoots off. You know, that's a great picture analogy of how to look at it. You know, that, you know, we're stopping the good flow, whereas the Roadrunners, you know, he's just there and in the flow and in the good times, and he doesn't let anything get to him, even the coyote going after him and trying to catch him. And I think there was one time he caught him, but somehow he got out of it. But for me, being a tennis player, the tennis ball is such a great analogy, you know, mind picture for me that, okay, thinking of this, let's just drop it. I can say to myself now, just drop the tennis ball. For me, that can be a way of how I can look at it and say, okay, it's time to drop the tennis ball, you know, and let it go. And I love that.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I love that analogy, because the Roadrunner is totally in control. He doesn't even have a concern for the coyote, because he knows he can get away. And if we had more thoughts that, yeah, I'm in control here, I got this handled, you know, and not worrying, because worrying is just gives us a false sense of feeling like we're in control, that if we're not worrying, we're not doing anything about it. And worrying really doesn't do anything about it. I just love that analogy, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good one, and it reminded me also is that, we have these worries, and I had, like when we were talking about financial worries, and even at our lowest financial situation, when we lost our house, I lost my car and we had to move, and it was just, one of those things. It's like even in that situation, I mean, sure, it seemed bad. I mean, we all have this like doom and gloom kind of thing. Oh, it's the end of the world. But in reality, it wasn't the end of the world. It was just a life change. We just made a change in our lives and we did something different. And when we can kind of recognize that, okay, what if it all goes to shit? If it does, I'm still gonna be okay. I can survive it, whatever it is. I can be like, be like the Roadrunner. Okay, I'm okay. So what? A rock fell right here next to me and smashed my house and smashed up the road and did whatever. So what? I'm still here. My family's still here. Everybody's still healthy. Whatever. And and even if it's a health thing, we can overcome this. We can work through it. We can face it as it comes versus being worried about what the what ifs, So, and having that confidence to face whatever might come and again, I just love the fact that he's like, okay, if you're worrying, think about it, let go of it, and ask yourself instead, what positive thing am I blocking here? What is it I'm trying to make myself feel bad for instead of feel good about? What are we avoiding feeling good about? Why do we think we need to feel bad all the time? So, yeah.
I was trying to think of when I gave up worrying, and I remembered it was when my daughter was missing, and my mind went to the worst places that it could ever go because she was missing for so long. And I almost put myself in an institution, by letting my mind go to those places. And I had to stop worrying because I had to find her. And so I had to take action, and I couldn't take action because I was in such a state of complete fear and kind of like that fight or flight, except I was in the frozen stage. And so and that whole situation, obviously that turned out good in the end. My daughter's a lovely healthy person with a wonderful family now, but that situation really taught me how powerful our minds are to create these doomsday scenarios about everything. And I kind of promised myself I would never do that to myself again, because we've said it so many times, and he says it in this chapter so well. He realized he has the finger, there's a misery button there, and it's his finger that either pushes that misery button or doesn't push it. And that's kind of what I figured out through that, was that I was heavy pushing that misery button, but it was all me doing it. She turned out to be perfectly fine, and none of the horrible things that I imagined happening to her actually happened. And in fact, some incredibly wonderful things happened. She was sort of an angel for many people during that time. And so this idea of let go and let God, serves me well. It really does, because I can't figure it all out. And I don't know what the end things are going to be. All I can do is kind of program myself towards the direction that I want to go, and leave the rest of it up to the universe to figure that part of it out, and try not to block that, because I think that's what these worry thoughts do, is they just block anything else good from coming if we don't snap ourselves out of them. People can go into depressions and stay there for years, you guys. I mean, this stuff that we talk about, we talk about it like, I mean, I talk about it like everybody knows it. Like, and I think because we're in this group and we've all been talking about these things for so long, we kind of sometimes feel like, oh, everybody knows this stuff, but really they don't. They really don't. And so I'm glad that we talk about it on here, and it's available for people to start their own conversations about these things. I love you. Have a great week.
Love you guys. It's past the top of the hour. Does anybody want to add a final word before we wrap up for today?
No, not really. I really appreciate what you were saying there, though, about letting go, Catherine. And sometimes it is just, it's a little bit easier to sort of boil it down to a mantra, but it certainly for me helps to dig a little deeper and know the whys and the wherefores about what it is that's actually going on. Because it's interesting to me, like in the book's example, where the person is using some wild thoughts or some conspiracy theory to avoid intimacy, or situations like that where we can actually kind of get in our own way. And so this definitely reminds me to think about what in those sorts of situations, or in moments of worrying or what have you, what positive things am I keeping myself from, or how am I getting in my own way? So and thanks so much, Samantha, for your examples too, your real life examples. They really hit home. Appreciate you all, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I think this is a great topic today, and a real eye opener. I think in a lot of ways that we can look at worry in a different way, that we can recognize it as as a flag in the darkness, or a light in the darkness, or something, where it's like trying to shine a light on what it is we're trying to, or what we're actually blocking ourselves from, versus um the real, what might actually happen, right? And I love that you shared, Catherine, that your son and his situation, and and of course I'm happy to help, and my husband would love to talk to him about trucking. It's his favorite thing to talk about. So I but I completely get it. It's a good example, because here he is, he's got this new job, this new opportunity, and he instantly goes into this worry phase, and I can't tell you how many times that happens to me. Whenever anything changes, or any different thing happens, or whatever with our trucking company, is that something is presented to me as an opportunity of some sort to get a new piece of equipment, or hire a new person, or do a different job, or any number of things, and I instantly go into this kind of worry mode of what could go wrong, versus allowing myself to feel the possibilities of what might go right. And it's like, even with this house, we got this house earlier this year, and we moved it, the kids moved in with us, so that we could work, have this place together, because it's a good sized property, in the house and all of that. And and rather than staying in this positive mindset of what this property could be for us, I keep going into this doom and gloom of, oh, okay, you know, part of it's a log cabin. Are the logs rotting away? You know, is my roof gonna fall off? We just had like 80 mile an hour wind storm come through here last night, and all I think about is how much damage the roof might get, or if a piece of furniture is gonna fly through our screened-in porch. You know, I mean, all this stuff that we, it's all little things. If something happens, we just fix it. You know, it's not the end of the world, but I like to doom and gloom myself over it. You know, it's ridiculous. So it's like, rather than thinking about the positiveness of all of it, you know, I keep going down this stupid worry rabbit hole. So I know, you know, if I'm doing it, you know, everybody's doing it in some way, shape, or form. And but I like this, you know, like Dan was saying, you know, just drop the ball, drop that worry thought like it's a ball. Take your finger off the button like it's a button, and think about instead, what positive thing am I blocking myself from feeling? Am I just blocking myself from appreciating this great house and the property and my family and all of that? You know, it's ridiculous. So I hope that this video and our conversation has helped you if you're watching. And if you want to talk about things like that, we'd love to have you on here. So you can find us by searching for Mindset Mastery Collective on Facebook, or just Google Mindset Mastery Collective, and our website will come up, our Facebook group will come up, our YouTube channel will come up. You'll find us. So with that, guys, have an awesome, amazing week, and we'll see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.